This is the Chefpreneur Podcast, where we inspire professional cooks to take on greater risk to build a personal chef business for themselves. Now, here's your host, Andres Hinojosa.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Chefpreneur Podcast. I am your host, Andres Hinojosa. Thank you so much again for tuning in today. I want to start off again by just saying thank you guys so much for tuning in and supporting this podcast. It really means a lot to me. I get such great feedback, and I'm really glad that we're able to deliver great content for you all that's really helping you guys basically start your business or giving you insight on what it is to start a personal chef business and really motivating, educating, and inspiring you guys to do so. So thank you again for supporting this podcast. Now, usually in this segment, we go ahead and take a question and I answer it here in the podcast, but we're going to skip over that part today because we have a little bit of a longer podcast, and I'll get to the reason why in a minute, but I don't want to shy you guys away from still sending in your questions. So if you want to send a question into the podcast, you could do so through email at podcast@chefpreneurprogram.com. Go ahead and send us a question. We love to hear from you. Or you can definitely post up a question in our Facebook movement group. So if you go to Facebook and you just type in Chefpreneur Movement, you'll find our free group, and it'll ask you a few questions to join, but it is free and it is a private closed group. So you can definitely post your question in there and we can pull that off, pull out the question from there as well. So thank you guys again for joining us today. Now, it's with my great pleasure. Today, we're actually going to be interviewing Lena Buggs, and she is one of the students in the Chefpreneur Masterclass at the moment. And I really wanted to bring her on today just to share her experience as well as her story, because I think you guys are going to really resonate with her story and where she's at and where she's come from. So without further ado, here is my interview with Lena Buggs. Hey, Lena, how are you doing today?
I am well, Chef. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And I just wanted to kind of start to ask you a few questions just to kind of share your story. And that would just kind of inspire many people, chefs and cooks out there that are looking to really start their own business. And so I've just, wanted this podcast to be all about you and your story, and kind of just see if we can inspire more people to really understand, that it's possible to step out on your own and start this personal chef business. And so I'm going to just start by asking, before you found the Chefpreneur program and started working with me, what were some of the things that you felt like you wanted in your culinary career?
Well, I wanted creative control. I wanted to cook the food that I wanted to cook. I wanted to present it in a way where I was interacting more with our guests, per se, or people that I was actually delivering my food to. I worked for a major chain corporation, and I was very disconnected from the service aspect. I would cook the food. I was a line cook for a number of years, 10 years. And if your listening audience isn't familiar with what a line cook does, it's basically the bottom level in the kitchen. Everyone starts out either as a prep cook, which they prepare the items that are going to be cooked for dinner service, or they start out working on the line, which is what I did. And so my specific station, I did sauces, and I was also on garnish. And whenever someone would call in, then I would usually work the grill station.
Okay, awesome. And what's some of your background? Tell us a little bit about, did you go to culinary school? How long have you been in the industry? And just kind of a general idea of your experience and your background.
Absolutely. So I did go to culinary school. I am a early 2000s graduate of Le Cordon Bleu. And I've always had a passion for cooking. I enjoyed the way that it brought people together, whether it was a joy type of deal, or, in times where people were grieving, but food was always the common denominator for me. Food made everything okay. And just seeing the expressions on people's faces when they would taste food and eat food, it meant a lot to me. So I decided to go to culinary school. And in culinary school, you're basically taught after you graduate to basically get a job, and everyone starts at the bottom, and you either go to a hotel or a restaurant. And I chose a restaurant. I wanted that restaurant experience because my dream was to always have my own restaurant at some point in time. But I, like a lot of other line cooks, came in, and as a line cook, it's a really grueling job to have. You're preparing foods, you're prepping foods on the line while you're cooking. You're working 12-hour shifts. You're just told to keep your head down, be quiet, and just cook the food in the corporate manner and the way corporate says that food should be cooked. You're disconnected. You don't get a chance to talk to your customers to find out if they actually like the food. In fact, the only feedback you ever got is if something was sent back to the kitchen. And the executive chef wasn't too happy if anything got sent back so the lines of communication, it was almost an environment as to you were expected to take a lot of abuse for low pay and long working hours.
That probably sums it up quite well. I mean, I've known the industry to be the exact same way, which I think, resonates with many of the chefs and cooks out there already. And you mentioned that you wanted to start your own restaurant in the future. So it sounds like you had some sort of an entrepreneurial spirit at one point. How long ago did you start to possibly do research or start to really realize that you wanted to start your own, I guess you would say, personal chef business?
Well, almost immediately when I was hired through this restaurant, the corporate restaurant chain, I had already had visions of me owning a restaurant and providing exceptional service in an intimate setting where my guests would come and I would almost, in fact, be kind of like a cook general manager. Now, that doesn't really happen when you own a restaurant, but that was the vision I had at that time. So I would say roughly about 10 years ago, I started to have these visions, and when I wasn't too heavily exhausted, I would actually because you never get weekends off in the restaurant industry, but on Mondays and Tuesdays when I would have my days off, I would just kind of create a vision board as to what type of restaurant I wanted, the type of customers that I wanted to serve, and the type of food that I wanted to create. And I was going to bring on employees as partners and treat them decently because I wasn't being valued and treated decently or respected, for lack of a better term, at my previous employer.
That's awesome. And so, so it sounds like you've been cooking in this restaurant that you were at for, you said 10 years, correct?
Correct.
And so if I could just, ask you just for all the listeners out there, what was it, basically you said you were starting to think about this business, pretty much right away 10 years ago. And from what I've known, and we'll get to that part of it as well, of when you actually stepped out on your own and started doing this, how come let me just ask you a simple question. How come haven't you done and stepped out on your own long before just recently?
Well, it was basically fear-based. I was afraid. When you are employed with a corporation, you have a weekly paycheck coming in. And, life kind of gets in the way of that. You have a family, I'm married, I had children, and I have bills to pay. And so life kind of got in the way, and I allowed it to get in the way because I had the steady stream of income, even though it was very low. I do want to share with your listeners that the typical pay for a line cook is extremely low, barely above what I'd like to call adult minimum wage. I was making $12 per hour. I'm not ashamed to say that, just to give your listeners an idea of what it is. Now, when I went to culinary school, there was all these grandiose visions that they had of cooks just leaving culinary school and going right away to work with prominent chefs, whether it be a Chef Ramsay type or a Chef Todd Moore type or some of the other kind of prominently known chefs of the current day. But I always had a vision that I wanted to start my own. But again, the weekly paycheck kind of had me in bondage. And so I would say, you know what, this is going to be my last week. And then I would get paid on Friday and a bill would pop up. Or, we were expecting, our second child or something to that nature that would pop up.
So that I think resonates with a lot of people. I think a lot of us are just fearful from leaving kind of our comfort zone and kind of that consistent quote unquote paycheck that we get. And, I was, when I was, just kind of before the episode or before the podcast, as we started recording, just resonated with me as you were telling me some of these things that, basically it's like realistically, the job's always going to be there, right? I mean, it's funny how in our minds we think that, it's the world's going to come crashing down. And yeah, we do have responsibilities. And in your case, of course, you have a family and you have responsibilities and we have bills. But sometimes we don't ever take that initiative to follow our dreams and our goals. And we end up, like you said, kind of almost remaining in a slavery kind of position of a bondage of just, I need that little paycheck, even though it was minute, you feel like you need it to survive. So now what was the big thing that started to give you hope in saying, what, it's been 10 years. I haven't still done anything, that I've been feeling in my heart for a long time on wanting to really step out on my own and start a business. What were some of the things, or what was the thing that really finally, gave you that courage to step out on your own?
Well, it was the hope that there was something bigger than the restaurant industry. And it was the hope that whenever I would cook for friends and family, that they encouraged me to step out on my own, that I could do this at a professional level, that I was able to have creative control. But what was the final straw for me was just the level of abuse that I was taking and the level of disrespect that I was having to endure at my job, that kind of us cooks, especially in the restaurant industry, almost wear it as a badge of honor. Who can take the most abuse? That means that you're the most passionate. And if you really think about that, that's just, it's absolutely silly to have that sort of mindset. But chefs we're very tough. And that's kind of what the restaurant industry fosters. It's like either you work for us or you don't work at all. And that's just simply not true. There's this whole other niche that's out there for cooks, whether you are classically trained, culinary, or even if you're an excellent home cook. There's this whole other market for us where we can be our own bosses, where we can say, you know what, we're done with corporate slavery. We're done with having to take all of this abuse, and we're tired of having our labor. We're tired of making basically the company rich while we're suffering. And so one night, it was about 1:00 in the morning, and I was on YouTube. And I'm in quite a few chef groups, but I was on YouTube and I found your video. And I listened to it, and it absolutely changed my life. And from that day on, I knew that I was going to fire my boss and fire the company and go on my own. However, I still said, well, you know what? I'm still going to stick it out. I was still having that mindset of sticking it out because I had bills to pay in the back of my mind. But I knew that after listening to your podcast and just listening to the information that you were sharing, that just wasn't out there. It wasn't out there. And I had been searching for ways to become an entrepreneur. I had been looking for ways where I could get my food out to people and people would appreciate my food. And I've been looking for ways to serve my customers without, having them feeling like, okay, we've eaten our dinner and now we have to be kicked out because it's been an hour now. And in the restaurant industry, we call them campers. If you stay in the restaurant for an hour too long, you're automatically a camper and you get kicked out of the restaurant. Now that is absolutely horrible. And
I think that's one of the things that is so, kind of so kind of I would say one of the things that's really wrong with the restaurant industry, when you have these campers there, again, the restaurant has to make money. So they're looking at turnover and so on the customer side, the experience is kind of lost, right? Because if you're celebrating a birthday or an anniversary, it's kind of like, you're relaxing, you're enjoying the time with your spouse or with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends. And here they come and they're kind of scooting you out. And so I really love how you touched on some of these things of why I believe that the industry right now as a personal chef and the industry to the client on the client side is really growing, right? More clients are using personal chefs nowadays. And I've said this stat to many people recently that about 85% of everybody who hires me in my personal chef business has never hired a personal chef before. And what's amazing about that is I'm in San Diego, California, which is probably one of the most visited cities in the whole world. And if you Yelp personal chefs in San Diego, there's over 400 basically profiles on there, and we know that not every single chef and even personal chef have a profile on Yelp. And so, with as much quote unquote competition or other chefs doing the same services as me, for me to be able to serve my clients and pull $250,000 in sales last year, and really 85% of them never hired a personal chef before, is saying a lot about the way that the market is shifting, for the consumer. Now, obviously, I believe that the industry is shifting, that this business opportunity is really creating a shift as well on the chef side for them to be able to start their business. And so when you were thinking about starting a business, 10 years ago, and you were really having that dream of a restaurant, which I've actually talked about on podcast as well as on another podcast about breaking down some of the cost. There's so many costs associated with starting a restaurant. And with this business, there's really minimal cost. Now, I noticed that when you were telling us all about looking for information on how to start this business, you were mentioning that there was not much out there in regards to teaching people how to really start this business. Would you say that that's a pretty true statement?
That is an accurate statement. I mean, I searched high and low, and there are some organizations out there who are allegedly dedicated to helping aspiring chefs or home chefs as well too. However, I just didn't find the information valuable. It wasn't until I stumbled upon your podcast where I really started to see the value in the information that they weren't giving, but that you were giving so forthcoming. And it drew me in. And so I wound up binge watching all of your podcasts. And, it was just so phenomenal. And I would start to go from listening to the podcast to actually kind of in my head and writing down and jotting down some things. And you invited us to the Chefpreneur Movement Facebook group. And I joined there, and it was just a wonderful community of chefs who are giving advice, who are helping other chefs. And that's really what this movement is about. Now, when I wanted to start my own restaurant, I had no idea that there was this whole nother industry and this whole other market that I could take advantage of. And I wouldn't have the overhead of a restaurant per se. And I could do some subcontracting when it came to employees, and I could develop partnerships. And without giving away too many of your podcasts, I mean, I just, I'm a huge fan of yours, Chef, and I appreciate all that you've done. And I'm also, in your program as well too, but I can't sing your praises enough. And this information that you were giving out was information that not only I needed, but that I felt was a message to all chefs, whether, classically trained or home chefs. And I like the message that you were sending out as well too. It wasn't a haughty message or a message of arrogance. It was really coming from a servant's heart. And you talk about servitude a lot. And I think it really made an impression on me.
Oh, thank you so much. And, I can't wait. We'll talk here in a few minutes about how Lina, did her first event in her own business and how well it went. And it just happened. And so it's really exciting. It just happened last night, actually, as we're recording this podcast. But One of the things that you said that really struck me was, dealing with the information and some of the other associations out there. Of course, I'm never saying anything negative about any association that's wanting to help people and really, give them information on how to succeed. One of the things that I realized and that I saw a gap in the market for was nobody really there was nobody out there really feeling like they were building, like what you said, a community, a family. And I think that that's where all education nowadays is going. I think that unfortunately there's a lot of universities, including culinary schools, right, that teach you basics. And like you said, you went to culinary school, Le Cordon Bleu. I'm a Le Cordon Bleu graduate myself. And, and we learned some great fundamentals in culinary school, but we also came out with a very, large bill. And at the same time, you still had to kind of work your way up. And I think that, unfortunately, there's a different approach on education nowadays to where, you want to learn from someone who's doing it and someone who's going to care about your success, as opposed to teaching you from a textbook and teaching you, kind of a more of a classical approach on education, to where it's like, well, here's a book and do it yourself. And that's one of the things that really struck my heart when I was really building this program and really building this community, the Chefpreneur community, was just to help people, to really truly want to help people, and also to build, like you said, a family and a community around the idea that all of us can start our own business, and we can take that we say here in the Chefpreneur Movement, that we can take a stand for our personal freedom and break the chains of that kitchen job, right? And because, I always say it to this way, that, with the chef starting his own personal chef business, you're able to kind of cut the middleman out. You don't need the restaurant to go straight to the client. It can be you and the client, and it's a done deal. And so that was really what this community and this movement was about. Now, I wanted to kind of just discuss also your success, Lina, because one of the things that's just, brought a lot of joy to my heart is to see you in the program, and also see you, taking the information that we're giving you and the advice that we're able to help you with, and you taking that and actually putting it to work. And you did your first event last night. And if you'd like to just share your story on how this all happened, and also just kind of share with us the experience of what the guest, experience was, and what your experience was cooking for these people last night, and just kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, it happened. I left my employer. This happened last Friday. I had enough of the abuse, and I just said, you know what? I am going to step out on my own. I had absolutely been fed up. And I just said, I'm done. I took off my apron. And by the time I got to my car, I thought to myself, Lina, what have you done? You have all these responsibilities, and you just don't up and quit your job. And I'm still having this mentality, but I had enough. So long story short, I was in the car, and one of our regular customers who I cook for on a weekly basis at the restaurant, as I was leaving, asked me if I provided personal chef services. And I said, absolutely. I had already had business cards made up, didn't have a website or anything, just my business cards made up with my business name on it and phone number. She called me while I was in the car. And she said that her son was getting engaged, and they were going to have an engagement party on Tuesday. And I'm completely shocked at this time, because here I'm thinking, what have I done? And now I'm actually having to sell this potential client on not only my ability, but my services as well. And is this really happening, that I'm getting my first client, and in this manner? So we talked. I sent her some sample menus, and she approved the menu, and then she paid all of what I was requesting up front. So I didn't even get a deposit from her. She paid completely up front, my price plus the cost of groceries.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I was literally excited. I was in tears. I was joyous. And then kind of the reality hit me that, okay, you've got to now deliver this exceptional experience for your client. And now it's very different cooking in a restaurant as opposed to cooking in a client's home. And I can't stress that enough. In the restaurant, you're just in the kitchen, you're cooking, you're at your station and you're cooking food, you're communicating with other chefs. And when you're a chefpreneur, you're basically doing everything on your own, depending upon the size of your event. My event was a 6-person event. It was a plated service and a 4-course. And it was just me. I really could have benefited from having someone else there, being as though it was my first time. But the customer and my clients, they loved it. They loved the food. They loved the experience. So on the chefing day, which was yesterday, my day started roughly about noon. I grocery shopped. I had to go to 2 different grocery stores and 1 farmer's market. And I arrived at the client's home right around 3 o'clock. They wanted dinner service at 6 p.m. And at 6 p.m., I was serving dinner. And let me tell you, cooking and serving at the same time proved to be quite the challenge, even though I got through it. Because again, coming from a restaurant background, you have servers who actually serve your guests and your customers. But in your own business, you're actually preparing the entree, you're preparing the appetizers, you're making the salads, you're preparing the desserts right there in the client's home. But let me back up for a moment. So I got to the client's home. I was greeted by the client, and I thank them very much for booking me and for allowing me to come and provide this wonderful experience. And I was very energetic from the time the client opened the door. I asked if it would be all right if I removed my shoes because I was a guest in their home, and they were completely blown away with that. And I asked if I could take a tour of the kitchen, went into the kitchen, and the clients had their own kitchen utensils, which they indicated I was more than welcome to use. So I used their utensils and their plates as well too. And I began cooking, and I began with started out with appetizers and salads first. And so I was cooking and collecting dishes at the same time. I also bought the client a tablecloth as well as a bottle of champagne and 2 champagne flutes because this was an engagement party. And the clients were blown away just by the level of service. And I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to serve the client. And I wanted to make sure that they had a memorable experience. So maybe 10 or 15 years, they say, Chef Lena came in, she cooked for us, she was energetic, she was a lot of fun, the food was excellent. We just really had a great time. So I cleaned up and I left. I mopped and swept the floors. I took out the garbage, just providing those little personal touches. And just as I was about to leave, I did give the clients a thank you card as well. And so just by giving them a thank you card and my business cards, the actual parents contacted me today, and they're having an event in July, and they would like to book my services in July.
Awesome. And, I love this story because this is a normal event for, any chefpreneur. And, we teach in the program on how to, basically give these types of levels of service where you're, where you have the heart of a servant, and you're proposing humility, and they're seeing your passion, and you're passionate about them and passionate about the engagement party itself. And, these things, these details, I think is the unorthodox things that we teach in the program as well, that really just to set you apart from the rest. And it's amazing how far that goes. Now, I don't want to ask you this question, Lina, to make you brag about what you did, okay? But I really want people to understand this and hear this out there. So, and you were mentioning how much you earned in your normal 9 to 5 or your normal job that you were at before, right? And just kind of tell us, with all due respect, let's just ask, if I can ask you, how much you charged for the service, how much money that was, in your pocket, and did they give you a tip at all?
So I requested, and this is before I actually got to the module in the program. I didn't know what to charge, to be honest with you. And I am a lot like the other cooks who are, kind of grappling and struggling with what should I charge. But I knew that I placed value on the service provided and the experience that I would be providing. So I charged a flat rate of $800 plus the cost of groceries.
Okay, perfect.
And the client paid that upfront. She paid $800 plus the cost of groceries upfront. And I was able to provide her with a grocery quote, which I have never done before. And it was just an estimate based on the cost per person of the event, as well as what I thought I would need to be able to deliver the service in terms of groceries. Now, I also want to, the client actually paid me $1,000 upfront.
Awesome.
Now, I also was given a tip by the client of $150.
Wow. That's awesome. Which you probably didn't even earn in one day at your job before.
Yes, as I indicated, I was a line cook and I was making $12 an hour. And if you break that down after taxes, what that amounts to is $51 per day after taxes. Right?
Wow.
Minimal for the skill set that I possessed, for the amount of responsibility the job placed on me, for the emotional distress that it caused me, and the financial stress that it was putting on my family. It absolutely wasn't worth it. But it was that fear of stepping out on my own that kind of kept me as an indentured servant to the company. And if there's anything that anyone else out there can get from our podcast today, is that you can step out on faith, but know that your earning potential is basically unlimited as long as you have these three things that all chefs should have. And that is humility, servitude, and passion.
Awesome. Well, no, that's just amazing. So, I mean, to think that you pretty much made in one day what you made in 2 weeks at your last job, or actually a little bit more than what you made 2 weeks at your last job. And this is kind of what I share with all our listeners, is that you don't need, 100, basically you don't need 100 customers every night like a restaurant does, because they're trying to get $15 here, $20 here from each customer. You really need a couple good paying clients twice a month, and you're almost making sometimes what you're making in your job now. And like I said before, so many of us are so caught up by the fear of wanting to step on our own that we never really get to truly experience what you've experienced. So, I think just in wrapping up this interview with you, Lina, what would be one thing, or what would be something that, you'd want to share with all the listeners out there if they're just really fed up with where they're at? They really want to start something like this. They want to take their own, basically future and put it into their own hands, and kind of get out of this kind of slave, job that they're in. What would you say to all of them today on this podcast? Just, as a word of encouragement, and just even, just kind of your, basically just your advice for them.
I would say believe in yourself. And also get some mentorship from someone who has been there before, who has their own business, and who's able to mentor you. Now, for me, it was Chef Andreas, and I'm in the program now. I'm going through the program. I'm learning even more now than I have listening to his podcast, which was in and of itself a plethora of information. But a lot of chefs tried to start their own businesses and kind of do it yourself. And I would advise against that. I would advise seeking out some mentorship. And if possible, I would just like to just say this program that you have crafted for chefpreneurs is an excellent program, and I would recommend it. But the number one takeaway would be to believe in yourself and your ability. Believe that you are valued more and worth more. You have a skill set that people are willing to pay for. And the second piece of don't try to do this yourself. Avoid making costly mistakes. Get some mentorship.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate that, Lina. It's my pleasure to have you in the program and really to continue to mentor you and guide you on, building the business from the ground up. And that's my number one goal. I've had a level of success and I've been very blessed, but I teach in the program step by step how I've done it. And we truly believe it can work for you as well when you're listening out there. The program in itself has taken me quite a long time to develop. And it's really, in a nutshell, everything I've learned in this past 5 years of doing my own business and building a business up to $250,000. And it's really my heart and my passion to help as many people as I can help to really start their own business. And we stand alongside you and we support you every step of the way. And I tell everyone in my program that if they're not successful, I'm not successful. And I truly mean that. So I appreciate you being on the podcast today, Lina. I appreciate your time. And I'm just so excited for the future of your business. And it's just the beginning. This is what's insane. It's just the beginning. I know that you were telling me before the podcast, you've been having, you weren't able to sleep and you haven't really been able to eat because you've been so excited.
Absolutely.
But this is really just the beginning, though. This is really, truly just the beginning of the rest of your life with this business. And really, what do you have to lose? People are so scared. And what do you really have to lose nowadays? Realistically, it's like, money can always be earned, but you can never get time back. And one of the things that I've noticed in my own business is I wish I had that mentorship and guidance at the beginning. I would have saved myself a lot of heartache and trouble. But again, there was no one out there that I was looking to or was able to look to for it. And so I had to figure things out the hard way. And again, now my number one goal is really to help all of you be able to build your own business, take the future, put it into your own hands, break that chain of the kitchen job that you're in where you feel like a slave. So thank you so much, Lina, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we hope that you guys all enjoyed this podcast today. Hey, you know what? I just wanted to end the podcast. We like to end the podcast every time with just, we really believe you can truly put the future into your own hands. We truly believe that. We want to help you. We're still giving away our free ebook. If you go to becomeachefpreneur.com, that's become a chef, PRENEUR.com. You can also catch our free web class at the chefpreneurwebinar.com. And as well, please join the Facebook group that Lina was talking about, the Chefpreneur Movement Facebook group. If you just go to Facebook, you type in the Chefpreneur Movement, you'll see the group. It is a closed group, but it's completely free. All you have to do is just answer a few questions to join. We'd love to have you in the group where you're going to be with other like-minded chefs such as myself, obviously, and Lina and hundreds of others that are really wanting to start their own business. And really, again, it's a community, it's a family that you can feel like you can trust, and you don't have to feel ashamed for posting questions. And we love to see your guys' pictures and all that. So thank you guys so much. We can't wait to talk to you guys on next week's podcast. And we hope you enjoyed it today. So take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Chefpreneur podcast, where we want to educate, motivate, and inspire as many chefs to become their own boss. Please subscribe to the podcast and join us every week to be part of the movement. To sign up for our free online web class, visit thechefpreneurwebinar.com.